It's Tuesday. The playoffs are rolling. Welcome to the Fantasy NBA Today podcast, a sports ethos presentation hosted by yours truly, Aaron Bruski, and FSWA Hall of Famer Steve, Dr. A. Alexander. Doc, how you doing, sir? It's been a whole 24 hours since we've spoken with each other.
I'm just sitting here trying to figure out a way to get Daniel Schneemann on my baseball team.
I still don't believe that that's a real person, but I'll take your word for it. And I'll also say hello to our sponsors. It's time to head to the track as the first leg of the Triple Crown, the Kentucky Derby, was here. And there's still other races that you can bet on. And for those races, BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for all things racing, as well as sports betting action. The largest selection of odds on everything from the NBA to NHL and MLB, UFC, and boxing. BetOnline has you covered for all your online wagering info. And in between games, head over to the BetOnline casino with all the top Vegas-style games, including poker and live casino. BetOnline, the game starts here. I love that read. All right, so we have a large discussion upcoming on third-year players. Did I get that right? Am I on the right section of our read here? Oh, my God. We're going through the best players drafted in 2022. Sorry, I was looking at the wrong rundown as we were yesterday. Looking at how they did, looking at ADP and their end-of-year rankings, and we're going to just talk about, are they a success or are they a disappointment? And what do we expect to see next season? And then we will have some takes on tonight's action. And I think this is going to be a little spicy episode here. So let's get right into it. We got a long list of guys that were drafted in 2022. I guess that makes them fourth-year players. Wait, is that right? Fourth-year players? Somebody will have to get an answer on that. But let's start off. Are they fourth-year guys? I think that's right, yeah. Or they just finished their third season. Yeah. Anyway, topping our list, a guy that just exited the playoffs a couple days ago, Tari Eason. Kind of a spicy meatball of a fantasy topic. I think most people by now respect the fantasy game of Tari Eason, but they're maybe not on board with the injury risk and everything associated with him. He had an ADP of 143, meaning he was kind of barely getting drafted in a lot of shallow leagues. I didn't see him go undrafted because I think the players that I'm playing with respect Tari Eason. And he finished up with a per-game ranking of 89, and he was really, really good at the beginning of the season. But, Doc, give me your thoughts on Tari Eason, and we'll just sort of kick this off.
I don't know if I would call him a winner or a loser if you drafted him last year. He's kind of right there. He only started 16 games. He only played in 57 games after only playing in 22 the year before. So he's got injury issues, which dogged him again this year. And that's part of the problem with Tari Eason. 12 points, 6 boards, 1.5 assists, a block, almost 2 steals, and a 3. Decent percentages, like solid. And I think we all know he's got the game to be a fantasy stud, but he's not getting enough minutes to make it happen. And even for this playoff Rockets team, he didn't get a lot of minutes off that bench. And Jabari Smith is in his way. Fred VanVleet is in his way. Amen Thompson is in his way. Hopefully, Houston's going to make a move or two and free up more room for Tari Eason to play in. But overall, I had him on a couple teams. I was fine with him. He's one of those guys like you could drop him and not feel like you're going to lose your butt later and go pick up a hot free agent, or you could have kept him and he put up decent stuff for you. But overall, I'd say it was a disappointing year just based on games played.
Yeah, it's a tough one to evaluate, and I'm really curious how this is going to look in next year's drafts. Are they going to remember top 50 Tari Eason and forget the 57 games played, forget some of the day-to-day nightmare of, is he going to play? Is he not going to play? And that stuff matters. I mean, if you can't start a guy because you're afraid of zeros for whatever reason, that makes him less valuable. As far as the numbers go, he had a relatively stable progression. He shot the ball a little bit better, not too surprising since the team was really good, getting higher quality shots, things of that nature. Everything else sort of stayed in line. The first season he played 82 games and he played 21 and a half minutes a game. He shot about 75% from the foul line. He shot 76% on the same volume this season. Rebounds, assists, blocks. The only number that kind of went up in a really good way would be the steals, but again, proportional to the minutes. So I think what we saw from Eason this year was, aside from some really good play, just in some high leverage moments, but it was just a continuation of all of everything he's done in the past. What I would like to see out of Eason is some sort of a wrinkle of improvement. Can he become a better dribbler? Can he become a better shooter? Can he become, a more spatially aware player? I think that might be part of this for the low minutes, and the fact that unless it's really teed up for him, he's not somebody you trust with the ball in his hands. And ultimately, that's why he can't get up into the 26, 27, 28 minutes per game range. Super compelling name to follow heading into next year's drafts. And I got to say, I think this is kind of 50-50 for him. Is he going to meet expectations or exceed expectations, I should say, or fall short? And again, a lot of it will come down to how the drafters remember last season. Let's see who's up next on this list here. We got Paolo Banchero, ADP of 35, finished with a 93 per game rating. This is all 8-cat, by the way. This rating, of course, takes into account percentages. And if people are drafting Paolo Banchero in a head-to-head league, they probably don't care. But how do you feel about that, Doc? Like Paolo Banchero drafted at 35, and he gives you 93 per game rating, clearly percentage driven, like the disparity in the ranking there.
I don't know if it's all. I don't know if it's all percentage, Brew, because the problem I've had with Paolo Banchero in the past was the lack of steals and blocks. And you hear his name and you see a guy that like blocks shots and gets steal. Like I think of him as a shot blocker and a steals guy. But then I look at the numbers. He had 0.8 steals and 0.6 blocks, and 72% free throw shooting. And like that, you combine all three of those together, and I think that's why you see the fall. I think if he was averaging like 1.2 steals and 1.5 blocks, he's pretty darn close to where his ADP was. So in the past, I've always been, I feel like I interrupted you, and I'm sorry about that. In the past, I've been like, I don't understand why people love Paolo so much, because he doesn't block shots and he doesn't steal the ball. But then this year I got sucked in and I was like, man, he's awesome. He's so much fun to watch. He's a great player. But the blocks and steals still are not there. And I'm surprised that's not talked about more in fantasy land. But it is what he is who he is. And I just, if he's not going to start stealing and he's not going to start blocking, then I think he's going to be overdrafted every year.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly heading that way, but I do see what I think other people see in his ability to take over a game. And probably the one stat that I'm actually happy about for him this season is he jumped up a couple field goals per game, attempts that is, and he kept his field goal percentage mostly the same. And so that signifies an additional layer of responsibility. Now, a lot of that came with Franz Wagner out. Also, a lot of it was super sporadic. Like he got injured super early, Banchero did. And I think prior to the injury, he was on something of a heater, taking like closer to 20, 23 shots per game. I might be wrong on that, but that's just kind of how I remembered it. And of course, this season with the big old injury in the middle, it's got to be taken with some degree of salt that, in a normal season, he could have probably found his upper bound a little bit better. But the big picture for him, I think it's roster construction for this Magic team. They don't have a single soul who can break the paint. And I think it turns Paolo into a one-dimensional isolation player. Yes, that's his normal game anyway, but like he, in order to be super dynamic, needs somebody to create something of a balanced basketball game, for that squad on that side of the ball. And it gets really pronounced in the playoffs when they can't really get anything easy. And then it all just kind of trickles down from there. For him to get steals and blocks, maybe he needs a little less offensive, responsibility, because he definitely sees the game that way. He sees the game as an offensive game, it feels like, and no need to go out there and grab some blocks. So I don't know. I don't think it's a success. I would hesitate to call it a failure on the basis of an oblique injury, but he's got a short leash, I would think, with fantasy GMs this upcoming season. The next name on this list is probably going to be, I don't know what about Keegan Murray. Like I watch him close up all the time. ADP 82, finished as a 113 guy and on a per game basis. This is kind of almost like very Keegan Murray-esque. Like it was as if he didn't play this season. Is kind of what it felt like. He just cruised to a almost top 100 rating in really a disastrous configuration for the Kings. They relied on him for practically everything defensively. Like, yeah, Keon Ellis is the guy I always talk about, but like Keegan Murray always got, even when it wasn't necessary, the defensive assignment. So they were sort of addicted to putting Keegan Murray on the other team's best player. So he ran a lot. He was definitely beat up. He had an ankle injury that went underreported that held him back. But what did you think about Keegan?
Not much. I had him on 0 out of 10 teams. I had him on 0 or 5. I don't know how many teams I had, 6 or 7. I had him on 0 teams. I didn't draft him anywhere. I didn't think about drafting him. I never played him in DFS. I never watched the Kings. He's just sort of like an invisible, forgotten man to me. I will say he's a good defensive player. He was actually one of my favorite Kings because the fact that he survived that season surrounded by DeMar DeRozan and Zach LaVine and Domantas Sabonis and Keon Ellis. It's just kind of a crazy cacophony of players on that team. So obviously, I think Keegan Murray could really benefit from a change of scenery. Him and Jabari Smith, Houston, are the two guys that I feel like they just need to get away from where they are and start over, and everything will be fine. But that's not happening. I doubt Keegan Murray is leaving Sacramento unless they make a big trade and he's a throw-in. I don't have a lot to say, Brew. I like Keegan Murray.
I don't even think
I don't care about Keegan Murray.
It's hard to care about the Sacramento Kings. I'll just put it.
It's not that I'm lazy. I just
don't care. I mean, I've covered this team for 10 years, and I actually kind of asked myself, like, are they even worth the oxygen? And I think like there's something about having a team in your backyard that knowing about them it feels like maybe you should know about the team in your backyard, like you're there. I covered them professionally, so there's also that linkage, but like they're such a go nowhere organization. They don't even know that Sabonis, like getting rid of Tyrese Halliburton for Sabonis, they don't even know that was a bad deal. Like literally they don't even talk about it. They don't have any clue in the greater Sacramento area that killed their franchise. So it's like, okay, if you don't even know what killed you, how would you be able to address any of the significant challenges that are ahead? It feels like they're going to try to keep it all together and run it back again. And that'll be interesting. We'll see if a player like Sabonis kind of tries to force his way out. But that's what it's going to take to get Keegan Murray to be good, because you can't have DeMar DeRozan, and I really think he's probably out of there, but you can't have that many ball handlers that can't really break the paint. That have the similar needs and the shortcomings that they have, and have a guy like Keegan Murray be good. you subtract one or two of those guys, and all of a sudden, I think he becomes really interesting, because I think a lot of people have bitten on the Keegan Murray hype and not really been paid off. And so I think people are just going to be like, oh, yeah, it's just disappointing Keegan Murray. You know, he'll probably come really affordable on draft day with a little bit of price built in for some of that name and some of his real talent. But yeah, it's like he's stuck in no man's land. The next name on our list is also stuck in no man's land, and you guys heard me talk about him all season long. His name is Keon Ellis. He was the 118th best fantasy play on a per game basis in 8 cat formats. He was barely drafted. Your ADP you see on screen, wherever you're looking at it, is probably because I did that. I drafted him everywhere. Super polarizing in the fantasy community, because in a head-to-head setting, percentages don't play as much, and he's getting the low volume counting stats is basically what it is. And also, he got faded by his own team for the first half of the season, which apparently, according to some reporting who said it was firsthand reporting, Matt George out of Sacramento said that he spoke with Mike Brown, and that Mike Brown said it was his choice because he didn't think Keon was getting it done. So anyway, now that I teed that up for you, do you even care about Keon Ellis one bit?
Not really. I don't play roto basketball. And if I played roto basketball, I think Keon Ellis would be a guy that would be on all my teams. But I play head-to-head mostly and some points. And he's just not a big player in those formats. 8 points, 3 rebounds, 1.5 assists.
Yep.
You know, 1.5 steals is nice. 0.8 blocks is nice. 49% field goal percentage.
How many minutes does he have? Is it like 24?
24.4. Yeah.
Yep.
But in a normal fantasy competitive, super competitive 12-team fantasy league, you can't have one of your starters scoring 8 points in a head-to-head or points.
Not knowing if it's going to be, you know, a good night or a bad night.
Well, especially the first half of the season when they weren't really playing him consistent minutes, it was really like, is he even going to do anything tonight? And those were tough times. But in a rotisserie league where all this stuff plays out differently, and you want to build, I mean, you could actually build a team around Keon Ellis' strengths. So it's very, like you said, polarizing and interesting. I need him to get up to like 12 points, 4 rebounds, 3 assists, a steal, a block, and a couple threes before I can really deal with him in a head-to-head.
The thing that will happen with Keon Ellis is he will, if this is going to work out really, really well for him, he'll take all summer and work on his handle. And then he will gain, like, I don't think he's capable of gaining 15 pounds of muscle. He'll gain like 5 pounds of muscle. And that will be a dramatic improvement in the ability to be a part of the offense. He just never wanted to do anything with the ball at all. Like, especially with 5 primary ball handlers on the basketball squad. He just was like, I'm not going to touch that thing. The minute I get him, I'll pass it. And he has a lot of skill in that area. And if Sacramento would be wise, they would take Keegan and Keon and pretty much get rid of everybody else and just start from there and just go from there. But he was the top 50 player in Roto, Keon Ellis, or thereabouts. And you got him at the end of your draft. And maybe even off of the waiver wire, depending on how much one would listen to somebody like me. Next on the list, Jaden Ivey. He finished with a 120 per game. I mean, is there even really a room for a grade here for Jaden Ivey? It's hard for me to evaluate his season. I could say this is I think that Detroit was better without him, and I don't think it's his fault. I think it would have been nice to have had him, but the minute this team balanced out around Cade Cunningham and just said, Cade, you just do everything all the time, I think they all got good with that. I think their roles were defined. They didn't have to figure out how to keep Jaden happy. I like Jaden Ivey.
Well, I think we found I think Malik Beasley found his sweet spot because Jaden Ivey was hurt.
Yeah.
Like Jaden Ivey only played in 30 games this season. Broke his leg. Right? He broke a leg, didn't he?
Pretty sure. So yeah, tibia. We'll get that here in a second, but
and he was playing well. 17 points, 4 boards, 4 assists, steal, couple threes. Like he was playing pretty good. I'm intrigued. I'm still intrigued by Jaden Ivey. I always have been. I've always kind of been a Jaden Ivey guy, even though he's never really blown up. But he got off to a pretty good start this year and was playing well when he got hurt. So it
was a fibula, by the way.
Okay. Interested to see what they look like next year, because that Pistons backcourt, had Ivey been around this year, it would have been really weird and really crowded, because they've got Cade Cunningham, they've got Tim Hardaway Jr., they've got Oscar Thompson, they've got Malik Beasley, they've got Dennis Schroeder, they have Marcus Sasser, and they have Jaden Ivey. So that's a lot of dudes.
With the job they did in Detroit, just creating a balanced ball club. Like, I was not jumping up and down for Tim Hardaway Jr. and Malik Beasley, et cetera, heading in the last season, but at least it added the shooting component that they needed to be able to run a Cade left, Cade right offense. And I if Cade can start really becoming a threat from deep, that will change things for that squad. I almost think that they can't really have a primary, or probably a secondary ball handler that functions like a primary, kind of like a Jaden Ivey or anybody else who's got an extremely downhill game. I don't think that they can really truly enjoy that without Cade hitting from much deeper out there, having much more gravity, because they're already packing the paint to some degree for Cade. And when you add another guy like Jaden Ivey, who's not known for his shooting, so much, that I think the balance becomes off, and you get too much usage out of positions you're not really extracting the value from. So it'll be interesting to see what Detroit does. And I know I would want to buy low on Jaden Ivey as long as the medical is clear. Next guy on this list is super interesting, because I think nobody really, outside of a few dunks here and there, truly said, wow, Shaedon Sharpe, he had a great season. But it felt like he did. The fantasy value wasn't quite there. He was kind of barely drafted. 142 is the ADP. I think I saw him get drafted in most leagues that I was in, but he finished as the 129 player in 8 cat formats on a per game basis. And I don't even know what to make of his season, other than I think he's got potential. I just don't know if it's going to translate anytime soon in fantasy leagues. But where are you at with it?
Yeah, it's weird, because I look at him as a player, and I look at his 18.5 points a game, and the rest of his stats aren't that bad. It's like, feels like he should be ranked higher than he's ranked. And he had a 36-point game. He had a bunch of like really big pop games, but he had a bunch of pretty rough games as well. So I like Shaedon Sharpe. I kind of wish he played somewhere other than Portland, so we could see him. And they're so weird. You don't know who's in and out of that rotation. Like, so many young guys and so many veterans all mixed together and in one big tank session. So it's just kind of weird. But props to Shaedon. He shot 45% from the floor this year, up from 40% last year. So that is a huge improvement, and it was great. Free throws, 78. He's a career 78% shooter, so that was fine. 4.5 boards, 3 assists, a steal, no blocks. You think a guy that could jump that high and block and dunk like that could also block a shot now and then. That would help do some good things for his fantasy value. But overall, next year, if Shaedon Sharpe is sitting there when it's my turn to pick in round 11, 12, or 13, I got no problem with taking him.
I mean, there's so many good things in this season here. The 45% shooting comes despite taking 6 of his 15 shots, 6.5 of his 15 shots, thereabouts, from three. And he's not really making a ton of 3-pointers. He's taking some pretty challenged 3-point shots, I would say, and he's making 31% of them. So for him to have a 45% shooting rate, I don't know if his 2-point numbers in front of me, but he's got about a 50% or more 2-point number. So the efficiency is more or less there. He's hitting his free throws, so the efficiency is more or less there. It's like everything's just set up except for that damn defensive number, which is just brutal. And I guess my question is, like, could he find his way to a place where they then say to him, all right, Mr. Athleticism, we need you to fly around. We need you to get steals. And is this just, some players are really addicted to position defense. Some players just don't want to do it. Some players just don't have the instinct to go out there in the passing lanes and get those steals. It just feels weird that he would be that guy. I've never looked at his game and said, oh, I think he's dogging it. It's really odd stuff, and it's gonna hurt his fantasy value. So I don't know. I think Portland probably will make a move or two this summer that will clear things up, and we won't have quite so much confusion surrounding this. But if it was all the same, heading into Portland next season, I would say I might be on the fade, unfortunately, just because of those defensive stats. So interesting stuff there. Next up on our list, Scotty Pippen Jr., ADP 139, finished at 139. I don't know if that's truly as accurate as it sounds by the drafters, but that's what it was. Scotty Pippen Jr. had some big moments in the playoffs. How much of this is real? Do you think he can kind of be a guy in the NBA and fantasy leagues? Can he survive being in Memphis?
I don't know if he can survive being in Memphis and playing behind Ja, but dude, the fact that his numbers were better last season than they were this past season is kind of shocking to me. Now, granted, he only played 21 games the year before last, but he averaged 13 points and 5 assists. And this year he averaged 10 points and 4 assists. So I was kind of surprised to see his numbers were that good last year. But last year, the year I'm talking about, everybody was hurt in Memphis. So everybody who was healthy enough to play got to a big role every night over second half of that season 2 years ago. But if Ja gets out of the way and Scottie Pippen is allowed to just go play basketball every night for 30 minutes, I think he's going to be a really fun fantasy player. As long as he's backing up Ja and playing 20 minutes a night, he's just going to be a guy that you draft at the end of your draft and, throw him out there on nights when you need somebody to play.
Yeah, Pippen, I had him as a do not drop guy about a month or two into the season, and then that milk went sour. It just disappeared. And I really think something about his style of play just was not meshing in Memphis. Like too many wild shots, too many careless turnovers, which probably wasn't like part of what people thought his game was heading into the season. So maybe he started to read a few of the clippings and figure he could step into that kind of responsibility. And for what it's worth, he's kind of earned that. I think he's been good enough to take more shots and to make more mistakes. But for whatever reason, it really soured. And then you did have Ja back, and that sort of pushed him out of things. And then last, say, 2 months of the season, right back into the driver's seat, doing things well, getting you lots of steals, super valuable down the stretch. And a lot of championship squads, I think, had some Scottie Pippen on them. So it's I think a successful season in the sense that he proved that he's got staying power. And I think, especially with some of the playoff stuff, he has shown that he is a potentially a starting guard in the NBA. And where that spins from here will probably be all about what happens with Ja Morant and what happens in Memphis, because, Memphis, like a lot of other squads, is just kind of hanging in there. Okay, let's see who our next guy is on this here list. Let's combine these guys since they're both from Indiana and they both kind of have similar issues. Andrew Nembhard and Benedict Mathurin, drafted right outside of 140 and finishing basically at 145 and 155 respectively. What do we do with these two? This is your neck of the woods. I mean, and they're in the playoffs right now.
Not really.
Wow.
Not really. I had
you are a
zero
resident fan. But go on.
I had 0 Nembhard in fantasy. I had 0 Neesmith. I had very little, if any, Mathurin. And I don't know. I know these guys all work together to make it part of a bigger successful puzzle. But I don't want Nembhard on my fantasy team. I don't need it. I don't. I don't even know.
Want it. I don't need it. Why are you selling me this?
I don't want it. I don't need it.
Is there any future for these guys? Like, I mean, in Indy?
Like, I'm mad at Nembhard because I want TJ McConnell to play, and Nembhard kind of gets
in the way of that.
Well,
I too, whenever I'm betting on the Pacers, I'm like, where's TJ McConnell? But like Nembhard he's damn good, man.
Yeah. Boring. He just puts me to sleep, man. 10 boards, 10 points, 3 boards, 5 assists, and a steal.
I think that's the overall stat profile for both of these guys.
And it's like Mathurin, when I watch Mathurin play, I feel like he can be a monster. He can be a beast. I don't see that with Nembhard. I wish the Pacers would play Mathurin more. I like Mathurin. I feel like Mathurin still has a chance to be a guy we're talking about, 3 years from now as kind of a fantasy badass. But Nembhard, man, I just don't know. I like him better in reality than I do fantasy.
Yeah, I think the conversation with these two guys is like, can anybody, whether it's them as players or the coaches in Indy or even us as fantasy analysts, can we find a future for them where they're, top 100 or something? And I like Nembhard to do that just because I think defense plays in the NBA and he's got a lot of defense left in him the next couple seasons. Mathurin feels like he needs to have like a Malik Monkish sort of revival in another location. And if I was Indy, honestly, I would try to make that happen because they've got so much excess talent. And, I think people would look at Mathurin and say, you know what? We understand why those numbers aren't quite popping. And especially the scoring numbers being able to be sold a lot more easily. I would say Indy trying to make something out of Mathurin here would be a good move. Let's go to another prospect that, really, I think a lot of people gotten excited about it. I personally have not, but there was some stretches of productivity this season, but it's Jeremy Sohan, and he wasn't really drafted, but I will say that in some of the expert high stakes leagues where people are super dialed in, Sohan was drafted, and he finished at 160 for 8 cat value. How do you feel about Sohan's chance of success next season?
That's a great question. We've seen this guy play power forward. We've seen this guy play point guard. There's a lot going on with him. There's a lot going on with San Antonio. Like, we still, 2 years of Wemby now, and we still don't really know what this Spurs team is all about, right? And we've got Chris Paul, and we've got Stephon Castle, and we got Julian Champagny, we got Devin Vassell, Keldon Johnson, and then you've got Jeremy Sohan along with a guy named Blake Wesley. So where does Sohan fit into this mix? And is Harrison Barnes going to be back next year? That's an important question as well. So there's so many unknowns with this team. I do like Sohan. I do like his game. I like his hair. And I think he's going to be a guy. I'm probably going to draft. I think I'm going to be a sucker for Sohan. It's weird that he somehow averaged 11 points 3 seasons in a row. You'd think that would go up or down or somewhere, but it hasn't. It's been 11.5 basically over the last 2 seasons. The 6.5 rebounds are nice. The assists are okay. The steals are pretty good. Not pretty good. They're 0.8. He needs to be better there. But I feel like I'm just rambling, Brew. I don't know.
Well, let's recap your ramble. You said that you were going to be a sucker for Sohan, and that you liked his hair, and that he scored 11 points 3 seasons in a row. I actually think you covered all the bases. I think you pretty much nailed that because I'll be honest. Like, I don't know what he's going to do. I think he's going to be better in a power forward position. Maybe getting little duck-ins. You know, it feels like Wemby doesn't want to play in the post so much. So he wants to kind of drift around the 3-point line. If there's going to be a lot of attention out there at the 3-point line, I think you're going to see Sohan kind of find the creases in the defense and be able to, because he's got a decent handle for a big man, you know, be able to kind of maneuver and get that high percentage kind of big man stat set versus point guardy sort of stat set. You know, it's one thing if you're going to not get defensive stats to, you know, to also have good field goal percentage and get points and boards and kind of play it that way versus you're not getting defensive stats and your field goal percentage sucks, you know, and there's issues elsewhere. So like the player, just very confused about how he's going to thread the needle. If he's going to thread the needle, I think it's at the power forward position. One more name here, and then we're going to get into some playoff check-in stuff here. Jabari Smith Jr. You mentioned him a couple times lately. Jabari Smith Jr. You mentioned him when talking about Keegan Murray, that he needs to be on a new team. He was drafted at 81. I was one of those people drafting around 81, and I was also disappointed in him this season, like a disappointed father. 168 is the final finish for his 8-cat ranking. What are we doing here? Like, what's the approach for this upcoming season? I mean, was it a successful or unsuccessful season for him?
We should have called this show the Forgotten Man, or I don't know, because that's how I feel about all these guys. They're all forgotten, and I don't know about any of them.
Despite being relatively exciting players, just to throw that out there, but they're very boring in fantasy leagues.
The weird thing about Jabari Smith is his scoring. He was at 12.8 his rookie year. Then he went to 13.7. Now he's down to 12.2, career low scoring this year. His minutes were also down. He was playing 2 minutes less a game than he did the previous year. His shots were down. He only shot it 9.9 times a game, where the previous 2 years he's shooting it 11 times. So it's just a weird year for Jabari Smith.
If I'm another team in this league, I'd be making that phone call.
Yeah, I mean, give us Fred VanVleet and Jabari Smith, because you guys don't want them, and I'll take them.
Pretty much. They're in such a bad spot in Houston. And I'll say this, I'm a Warriors fan, and I had plenty of bets on Golden State, so I was rooting for them very hard. You know, and then in Jabari Smith, every time he got the ball, I was scared because it just felt like he was not going to miss. I don't have his numbers in front of me, but I mean, we're talking about a guy who's, what is he, 7 foot? Is he 6'11"? I mean, it feels like he's a 7-footer with a long reach. And he can drill the outside shot. And I theoretically think he can play the center position at the NBA level and provide some rim protection and bulk up eventually and be the kind of player that you want down there. And they're going to go all in on Şengün, and it makes sense because of the offensive stats. And I do think that Şengün at least has a little bit of fight in him on the defensive side versus some of the other ground bound, bigger big men. But at the same token, like, you can play Şengün off the floor. You can single up Şengün and let him be the focus of the offense and cover everybody else like the Warriors did. And, you got a guy like Jabari Smith Jr. just sort of sitting over there, drifting at the 3-point line, sitting on the bench, not able to do anything because, he's not going to bring the PRA, points, rebounds, and assists that, look good in a box score. I don't know. I don't think it's going to happen for him in Houston. If he's in Houston, are you drafting him if he's in Houston next year?
Nope.
Not at all.
I don't think so. The fact that one of my good buddies, Steve Smith, is a huge Rockets, Texas in general fan, and he came up to me at trivia one night earlier this season. He was like, dude, I cut Jabari Smith today. And I was like, what? Yeah, I dropped him. And at that point, that was all I needed to know about Jabari Smith for the rest of the season. Like, if this dude's dropping Jabari Smith, then he should be dropped everywhere. But yeah, I mean, that's not true though, because Jabari did come back and played better and had his moments this year. You know, all these guys on this list had their moments, but when you look at the overall picture, that's where there's a problem. And with Tari Eason still needing to get minutes, and even who's
I mean, you played
Campbell's
Amin
guy.
Thompson as well. Oh, you got
Yeah, I mean,
Reed Shepard eventually, and
who's the Cam on Dallas? Cam.
Oh, Whitmore. I thought you were talking
Whitmore.
about they got players coming out of players. Dylan Brooks is getting. It's the whole identity of the team is built up in guys like Dylan Brooks, Fred VanVleet, Amin Thompson, Tari Eason, Shingun, Steven Adams. And then out on the outside, you got Cam Whitmore and Jabari Smith. And, you know, if you want to say Reed Shepard's on the outside, that's fine. But like they're not, Jabari's not a part of that. We're going to just throw you to the ground and, beat the crap out of you kind of mindset. Maybe that's working against him as well. But I would be making a phone call if I were any other team in the league, because these 3-point shooting centers, the minute you get one that can actually defend, you could go take a shot on a player like, say, Domantas Sabonis, who eventually nobody's going to want him, and that's probably the case already. But if you have a 3-point shooting center who can block shots, then that guy all of a sudden becomes a very good acquisition. And just something to think about out there, teams.
I will say, Bruce, if Jabari Smith or Keegan Murray were to be traded, I would probably be excited about drafting both of them. I don't like them where they are.
Yeah, you and everybody else. I don't know how to play that. I don't know if there's going to be a lot of value here, because the minute that would be to happen, if Keegan got traded, Jabari Smith got traded, everybody and their mother, I think, would be all over that. But yeah, it just sucks to be Jabari, I guess. Playoffs. We got the playoffs tonight.
Playoffs.
I can't not do that.
Not the playoffs.
Yeah, I can't not do that. Some quick updates coming out of yesterday's news. DeAndre Hunter dislocated his right thumb and is questionable, along with Evan Mobley. You guys might have an update sooner than this show gets posted on all of that. Kenny Atkinson did say there was some concern about their status. I don't know that we have an update on Darius Garland either. So we got Cleveland a little dinged up. I know you were saying on yesterday's show that you kind of like the Pacers. What is your take on this series?
The Pacers and Cavs.
Yeah, Pacers and Cavs.
That's the one you're talking about, right?
Yeah.
Darius Garland was out for game one, and the Pacers won game one at Cleveland rather handily. Like they controlled that game basically from the opening tip until the end. And all of this most overrated player in the league, Tyrese Halliburton.
Ooh.
A stupid poll that did the Athletic do that? I think it was the Athletic.
The Athletic did it, and they're polling players.
There's only like 98. There's 98 players that responded. Only 17 of them, or 13, some
dumb low number,
said that Tyrese was the most overrated, but it was enough that it put him number one on
probably
the
the
list.
entire Milwaukee basketball squad.
And his dad is ticked off about it, and Tyrese is ticked off about it, and his coach is ticked off about it, and his teammates are ticked off about it, and everybody in Indiana is ticked off about it, because I keep getting these text messages that say stuff like overrated my ass, whatever. If that's the fuel that Indy needs to go do this thing, then so be it. I'll take it. I wrote that betting the Pacers to win the series before it started at plus 500 was a good gamble to take. Because I don't think Cleveland is as good as they've looked all year. I just don't. I don't see it. I don't. They're not Oklahoma City good, but their record was Oklahoma City good. And these Pacers are playing well, and everybody's rallying behind Tyrese, and he looks awesome. And Miles Turner looks reborn, and Siakam's playing really well for them right now. And I this could be the little team that could. So I'm pretty fired up about what the Pacers have done so far.
Yeah, I mean, plus 170 on DraftKings to win the series. And I mean, I sprinkled a little Indiana to win it all just so I could have some leverage in later rounds. A couple weeks back, kind of sensing against Milwaukee that everybody kind of pigeonholes Indiana into being this little team that could. And, I think the slow start helped with that. And all the talk about Tyrese and the early struggles. I mean, you can connect them to a dot. His back is really, really bad then. And it could happen at any point in time, I guess, right now. But the reality is that they are just better than you or whoever at multiple spots. And when you look at Cleveland, they got this so-called kind of, jacked up rotation where, they've got like 8 or 9 players that run deep. Indiana might have an advantage at any slot in that whole rotational scheme. And so while I think Cleveland has the high-end punching power if they get Darius Garland back, what I've noticed is I don't think that they have been able to I don't know what you got going on back there, man.
I'm on the air right now, friends.
I love it.
Good Lord.
It was like a chicken fight of some type going on back there. That was
a baby.
Yeah, I was going to say it's a little baby. But they are in Indy able to defend Cleveland with the playoff officiating in a way where the double bigs are not doing double big stuff. Cleveland was able to eat off of that all season long, where you've got Evan Mobley and Jared Allen being able to control the paint and also get out and challenge stuff. And then they're able to run the vertical game offensively as well. In this setting, they can't get so free. So they aren't free for lobs, and they ain't free for, all of the stuff that when the play breaks down, they're getting easy buckets off of it. And then defensively, it's as if they don't have players to guard. Indy gets up and down the court so fast, and they're going to have to do their work on defense out on the perimeter. So that whole equation with the bigs, I think, is working out in Indy's favor. And then you look elsewhere in the rotation, and I mean, absent like Donovan Mitchell, probably can be safely assumed that he's probably better than his counterpart on the floor at a given point in time. But really, like, Indiana has advantages almost everywhere. And that played out in that first game 1. So I'm pretty interested. I'm actually going to take Indy in a continuation bet. I believe I got it at plus 9.5. I really look at this Cleveland team as a 6-point favorite at home, maybe a 7-point favorite at home in a game where it's really a must-win game in a sense for them. I mean, of course, it's not over if they lose, but going down 2 games, heading back to Indy, where I would expect Indy to split if that happens, they're just still screwed, Maybe they could pull off the unthinkable and bring it back to 2-2. So I think they'll play hard, but I don't look at them as a 9.5-point favorite. So I got Indy tonight. Do you have any action on this game tonight, or are you sitting that one out?
Yeah, I'll probably be betting the Pacers since Cleveland's going to be favored by 9.5 again.
Yeah,
Give me the points.
It seems like an unrealistic number here. Any closing thoughts on Warriors Rockets? Since I don't know if we've had an opportunity to talk about that.
Well, I haven't had an opportunity to talk about the Lakers.
Let's go back in time real quick.
Talking about the Lakers Wolves, right? Because I don't understand what JJ Redick was doing. We talked yesterday about, if the Lakers had Mark Williams, maybe they would have won that series. Well, would JJ Redick have played Mark Williams? He didn't want to play Jackson Hayes. Like, he was starting Dorian Finney-Smith at center. And yes, Luka's defense was terrible. Everybody can bash on Luka all they want to. JJ Redick did a really bad job of coaching that basketball team.
I know I found myself, because I wasn't really paying attention to that series so much. So I was probably the perfect guinea pig here. I just kept asking myself, where's Jackson Hayes? Where's Jackson Hayes? They need Jackson Hayes. And then they would have Jackson Hayes on the floor for like 1 second, and Luka's lob threat game would open wide up. And I'm like, oh, they should keep doing that. But where's Jackson Hayes? So yeah, eesh.
Well, and the first game when he benched Jackson Hayes, Gobert comes out and goes for like 30 and 16 or something. I don't know what the numbers were, but he was dominant, just an absolutely dominating performance, because they had nobody to guard him. So I thought the next game, well, he's got to come back with Jackson Hayes and let somebody try to body up Gobert at least. Nope. Same game plan again. So I don't know, man. And they obviously miss Anthony Davis's interior defense, because that's all they had going for them. As far as the Warriors and Timberwolves go, or the Warriors and Rockets series, I thought the Rockets did a great job in that series. Pushed the Warriors to the brink, but Steph Curry and Draymond Green and Jimmy Butler just weren't going to go out like that. And I thought the Warriors were going to win. I thought Rockets were going to make it close. That's kind of what happened. And now the Warriors get Anthony Edwards and the Timberwolves, which is going to be a fascinating series, I think, to watch. So can Steph Curry and Draymond Green and Jimmy Butler keep this thing going and maybe make a run at a title? We're about to find out. But I feel like we're about to see Ant Edwards go off again. Like he got so fired up playing against Kevin Durant last year's playoffs, and that was when he really said hello world. And I think we're about to see that again.
I'm so fired up for this series. This one, Warriors Rockets, I was pretty fired up for that one. This one's got so much going on. And you mentioned Gobert. If not for Gobert, I would really think that the Warriors would be in trouble in this series, because it's like on one hand, like Steven Adams, Steven Adams wrecked the Warriors, and it was because of the combination of the elements around him. Adams, Şengün, flanked by, Amen Thompson's crazy defense, Tari Eason's crazy defense, Fred VanVleet's great defense, Dylan Brooks, pretty good to great defense most of the time. That's a crazy combination. And the Warriors not having a single big man that can really do anything against that really factored into that series, made it a lot closer than I think it would have been otherwise. Now you go into this Wolves series. Well, Kevon Looney can play against Rudy Gobert. Hell, you could throw Trace Jackson Davis out there against Rudy Gobert and survive a few minutes. So this problem of not having enough depth for Golden State, it kind of gets answered by the Rudy Gobert thing. And it's not like they're terrible defense in Minnesota. I mean, they're a high-end team. So I don't think that they're just suddenly bad on defense because of, quote, defensive player of the year, Rudy Gobert. I just think it opens up a particular door for Golden State to get 30 extra minutes into the rotation that they were really struggling with playing their starters and their big guys, big names, 44 minutes a game. Elsewhere in that game, you're going to get Anthony Edwards against Jimmy Butler all the time. Jimmy Butler's not going to bite on a lot of fakes. He's going to be able to play Anthony Edwards straight up. And I think Anthony Edwards is an interesting player in that he really hasn't been able to take what the defense has been giving him in relation to his talent level. And I think that's where you get some of the frustration. And it's he goes off for 45 one game, but then he kind of hits 20 points in the next. You're like, well, why can't you do it every single night? And it's because he'll settle for threes. He won't get around. It's not like his handle is impeccable at this stage, and teams can just sort of put a foot in the paint. And he's like, nah, I'm not going to go in there for a few minutes, 6, 7, 8 minutes at a time. I think Jimmy Butler can help force that along. And I think even the guys that are not good at defense, like Buddy Hield, maybe mid-level defenders like Brandon Pajemski, I think they can actually be useful against Anthony Edwards and just sort of get in the way at a more effective level than you would give them credit for. And there's other interesting matchups, and it's not just one-sided. Like Golden State's got this thing all figured out. One thing in that area though, Naz Reid. If the Warriors can get Draymond Green matched up with Naz Reid for a longer periods of time, and I know in their switching schemes that kind of gets a little bit difficult, but if they want to single out Naz Reid and put Kevon Looney on Rudy Gobert, I think that's a great defensive equation for the big men in Minnesota. And then you kind of make it a referendum on Julius Randle. Minnesota's got several advantages. I mean, I think Mike Conley, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, Ant Edwards, Dante DiVincenzo, as a four-man crew is about as compelling as it gets to try to kind of wrangle Steph Curry. Golden State will definitely have issues with scoring overall if Jimmy Butler gets passive, if Draymond gets passive. I mean, there's a lot of different ways this could tumble south for Golden State. I just think it's going to be a great series, and I actually like Golden State in Game 1 with the 6 points that I got a couple days ago. I think if I was rating this series more, I would think that the Game 7 stuff is hurting Golden State and probably pushing that number up. But I would think that like at home, Minnesota should be like a 4-point favorite maybe in a Game 1 of this type. But right now, I think there's not a lot of confidence in Golden State, and I think people's confidence in Minnesota has been reinvigorated, and that's why you see 6 points. But what about you? You got any action on that game?
I want to piggyback on your point. I think you're right, man. The fact that the Golden State has Draymond Green, Quentin Post, Kevon Looney, Trace Jackson Davis, and Jonathan Kuminga, that they can throw bodies at Rudy Gobert at least, and they need to, because the Lakers should have done more of that as well. I just don't think they had the bodies to do it. But I like both of the underdogs on Tuesday night. I like where'd it go? Where did my point spreads go, Brew? I know we're running out of time. Here we go.
I like the morning. Let me see what it's.
I like the Pacers getting 9.5 at Cleveland for Game 2 with or without Darius Garland. And right now, ESPN Bet says that Minnesota is 7.5.
7.5. Oh my God!
So give me the Warriors in 7.5 all day.
This is what I get for taking these plays early. Should have waited. I think I got that at 6.5. So. My mistake, but it's always fun to see the line travel in the direction you're betting anyway. Lots of caveats to that point for those of you out there who do the capping for a living. Any other plays before we get out of here?
No, I think we've covered it. I think we've had a nice little Tuesday 58-minute run here.
Oh yeah, with that clock ticking, if we could keep that thing at 4 digits, I know a certain somebody would be super happy. And that will do it for us, folks. We will be back tomorrow, or the guys will be back, I should say, to help guide you through the rest of the playoffs, as well as keep talking about the fantasy season that we just had. Check out our MLB and soon after that, our NFL offerings. We are putting together a facelift for the website, as well as adding a ton of tools into the fantasy passes. So check out the fantasy passes at sportsethos.com. Big shout out to our sponsor, Bet Online. I love doing your reads, and I'd love to keep on doing them. That will do it for us here today. For Steve, for Andre, this has been Fantasy NBA Today, presented by Bet Online. And ladies and gentlemen, be well.